Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lodge podcast. I'm your host, Scott Milley, and I'm so excited to be back today with episode 16. Today, I'm joined by my uniquely talented guest, Ryan Miller. Ryan, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great today. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Happy to have you on the show. Ryan has been working in the Ontario gaming industry for well over a decade now, with stops at Bithead, Secret Location, among many others along the way. He's also the co-founder of Reptoid Games and has been teaching youth throughout his journey. Today, we're going to be talking about his work with MRC Studios, his latest initiative as director of the Ontario Game Testers, Interactive Ontario's Indie Superboost, and so much more. So, without further ado, let's get into the conversation. So, Ryan, with season two, we've been using the same prompt question, and I think it's actually led to a lot of interesting discussions. So, I pose this question to you. What got you into the gaming industry in the first place? Was it a game you played when you were a kid? Was there a particular brand that you really enjoyed? Was it an industry event that you went to that you said, you know what, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? What was it that kind of brought you onto this side?
So I think probably the very first thing to kind of point to there is when I was, 5 or 6 years old. Like probably every single person listening to this episode, I played a lot of video games. So I remember playing through Mega Man 2 and then Mega Man 3 on Nintendo Entertainment System, and thinking I've got the best friggin' ideas for what they can do in Mega Man 4. Drawing a bunch of pictures, finding a way to mail it to Capcom, along with some pocket change I had because I was a 5-year-old. I had like a pile of change, so I
Wow.
mailed a package to Japan with pocket change and a bunch of dumb drawings of Mega Man characters, of what I thought the bosses should be. Little did I know, like Mega Man 6 had just came out, and I'm pitching ideas for Mega Man 4. I later tried to follow up by phoning them to see if they got the package. So I somehow, this is before the internet, I somehow found a phone number for like uh, Capcom Japan and called them from my my home phone, which my parents were very upset about
Mhm.
because that was an expensive call.
Long
I never
distance,
got an
yeah.
answer. So I think that was kind of the thing that was like, there's something wrong with me that wants to get into gaming. Um, and then just way later in life, I had plenty of experiences on like kind of the earlier internet with one big one. There was a probably no one's heard of it now. It's a thing called Graal Online, Graal, which was like a
No.
Zelda 3 ripoff, rebuilt in Java as an MMO, where you could like host your own
Whoa.
server, and it had a level editor and stuff. So I made a player server for that called Damaska, and like I think at our peak there was like 30 or 40 people playing at one time. So I had just made all these levels in their level editor and done some scripting in their really weird scripting language to make some like enemy behaviors and stuff. So that was kind of the thing that like made me realize that people can just go and make games and that other people can play them. That was the kind of the one on one, and that was in like 2000 or so.
So this has been just
So
a lifelong journey from the get-go. From the jump, you were like, "This
yeah,
is what I wanna do, and I'm gonna find a way to get into this industry and make games."
pretty much. And then from there, going through high school, I had, a little bit of exposure to a lot of the different parts of games. I kind of settled on the graphics side of things. When it was time to like apply to colleges, I applied to animation, computer programming, and human resources of all things.
Interesting.
Which, like looking back, that makes a lot of sense. But I went with animation, and that's kind of how my like career started. So I worked in an animation studio doing a bunch of things. I did like background compositing, or I did compositing. I did background painting, a little bit of animation, and like kind of worked in like TV animation for a while. But then from there, I kind of pivoted into games, and a little more away from being an artist and into being a programmer, and then all the other stuff after that point.
So one thing I did wanna bring up, was your position at Bitheads, right? Being a 3D artist. It was like one of your first gigs in the industry. First of all, were you living in Ottawa at the time?
I was.
There are so few people that I get to talk to on this podcast. I'm from Ottawa, and I'm currently in Ottawa. So
Oh,
there are
right
very
on.
few people that I get to talk to. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. Bitheads was a really good experience at the illustrious Westgate Mall. That was a really cool studio. They so for those who don't know, Bitheads operates in a former movie theater in the Westgate Mall. So they had like gutted the space. There's a lot of really cool verticality to the space. Their logo is like an Easter Island head. So they actually have a big Easter Island head that's like, 2 stories tall, right in the center of the main area, which is really neat. And they kept one of the movie theaters in there as well. And, we had lots of fun times. They also kept the beer on tap.
Wow.
So we had lots of
It was a different
lots of
time.
fun evenings at that studio, drinking beer and playing Rock Band in the theater together.
That's a good start in the industry. It's a good vibe. Was it something that did you come to Ottawa for that specific reason? Did you find that position and then you were like, you know what, I'm gonna make the move, or was it somewhere you already were?
So I had made the move my last year of college. I had applied to work at Mercury Filmworks.
Hmm.
So my wife was working there at the time. She had just started previously, and I was like, "That's my in." Not that she was high ranking or anything, but they hired me on, and I kind of like strong armed my college into like letting me have a co-op or internship or whatever you call it, even though that wasn't something my program offered. I was like, "Hey, I got a job. Can I go and work that instead of doing my final semester?" So I went off to Ottawa to basically get started in the
Wow.
industry in animation.
And made your way back. That makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of
Um,
I always wanted to get back. Like Ottawa is really cool, but I think Toronto was kind of more my style.
yes. I again born and raised in Ottawa. I also prefer Toronto. So one thing that I did want to bring up too as well is even just going through like your storied resume, secret location being obviously a huge one. A lot of the places that you went to, you came back to. Was that always something that was intentional in your career, or you just, you know what, like you were at that point in your life, you were just talking to somebody there and you were like, you know what, I'll go back for a little bit. It's just interesting because I think it happens what 3 or 4 times that you
Yeah,
work on a couple of projects, leave for a bit, and like, you know what, I'm going to go back. So that I think that speaks a lot to that HR thing you were mentioning is your relationship building with studios and people.
yeah. I mean that's the word right there. You just said it, relationships, right? So I joke with my partner a lot because my partner is she's very loyal to the place that she works at, and so
Mhm.
she'll work at a place and like she's into that place, and she's not constantly thinking about working somewhere else and what other places are like. She's good there, and extremely good at what she does. But it's a very different style to me, where I like working on lots of things at once. So
Yes, you do.
I get a lot of juice out of hopping from company to company because I'm just like so curious how everything works and how everything's run and how different organizations deal with the same issues that we're all really going through. So yeah, maintaining relationships is number one, and I really like coming back a couple years later and seeing what's different at an organization that I worked at before, and what can be applied there. So yeah, I love coming back.
I think that also gives you like a bunch of different unique skills because like if you work at one place for 10 years, you kind of get stuck in the ways that they do things. But the fact that you've been able to kind of jump around and see how all of these studios function, it kind of gave you, I'm sure, gave you some of the tools to be able to co-found your own studio. So I'd love to talk a little bit about Reptoid, a little bit about your experience there.
Mhm. Yeah, Repwood was like probably still by far the most influential part of my career in game dev. I mean, starting your own studio tends to be. So yeah, Reptoid technically Reptoid didn't start in 2015. Technically, that corporation was around since 2012 that I was doing a lot of freelancing through. But we amended all the articles and kind of renamed it and made it into Reptoid when Simon and I decided to do something together. So Simon being the other co-founder of Reptoid Games. So that company really started in 2015 for real. So I had known Simon from my animation days in Ottawa. That's where we met. So he was directing the shows that I was working on as whatever role that I was on at the time. We always got along really well together and liked to chat and have a few drinks together and talk about how we're going to fix the industry and how we're going to make it better and all that kind of stuff. Um, so I think Simon had moved to Toronto in 2014, I think. We were hanging out more, and kind of through hanging out and through me telling him all about the game industry and him, wanting to find better ways of doing things, we kind of decided let's start a studio together and let's go get some Ontario Creates funding. Let's go work on some client projects. Let's mix together the like really strong like animation directing kind of stuff that he did with a lot of the technical things that I'm doing. And I think it was a really good run that we had there together.
He's also just a delightful human being.
Oh yeah, he's so
Yeah.
nice.
It was part of one of IO's programs, so I got to meet and talk with them. I was like, "This is just these are the people that I love to meet. These are like the indie studios, like the genuine people that just love what they do, very passionate and just excited to talk about their project." And it's like, yeah, he was just a delight to be able to meet and talk with.
Yeah, yeah, and he's brilliant. Like I learned so much from him, and his just he's a very good analytical mindset of like drilling down to like what is the thing that we're really trying to accomplish here. And I think that probably came from like he was an animation director very early in his career. He's also like a really good storyboard artist. He's really good at just talking to people and like being forced to having
Mhm.
been forced to figure out a lot of stuff early in his career. I think he really responded to that kind of trial by fire really well, and he's got a great mind for figuring stuff out. So especially over the development of Fossil Hunters, I would like many people who program games, I would have moments of tunnel vision where I'd be like, I have to get this done, I have to get this working, this has to work that way. And he'd come in with all these things that I think at the time I wouldn't be very excited to hear. I wouldn't be very open to of like, what if we just didn't have this feature, or what if this feature just did that? What are we really trying to do with this? And I'm like, Simon, leave me alone. I'm trying to figure out an algorithm for sorting through these hierarchies of skeletons and evaluating their values in a blah 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 blah. And he's like, why don't you just make it work this way? Like, huh? I mean, but he would come through and like I remember it was like it was kind of frustrating at the time, but then when I got out of that kind of tunnel vision, like he's so good at taking a step back. This podcast is about Simon, by the way. Hi,
Hell
Simon.
yeah. Yeah.
But he was so good about taking a step back and being like, what are we really trying to do here? What really suits what the project needs to do? And just kind of like stepping back and taking that framing. And, I found there were so many problems that were so much more easily solved when you take a step back and look at stuff from the product level instead of from the task level, or like, trying to complete a feature or an epic or, whatever in the game. That's kind of too much in the trees trying to see the forest. So that's probably the biggest thing I learned from him. It's just like perspective.
And that's something that
And
it seems like you've been kind of passing on to the youth in a way, because throughout your career, you've been teaching.
yep.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about why you wanted to get into that and why that is like that seems to have like defined your career now with working with Durham College and MRC Studios, which we're going to get into in a moment. But it seems to be something that is it's integral to what you do. So I'm just curious a little bit about where did that drive come from? Was that something early on? Was that something working with Simon that you were like, I want to be able to teach somebody like he's teaching me this? Or what was it that kind of struck that for you?
Yeah, I think when I came back to Toronto in 2010, I think it was, I was running my own business. I had just kind of like flipped the entrepreneur switch and started working for myself and then doing projects and stuff. And that was a lot of like working at home alone on my computer. Sometimes because the projects, the way the NDAs or the secret nature or whatever mandated I do, I was definitely getting socially starved a little bit.
Mhm.
So uh, teaching at a college is a amazing solution for that, because you go from working alone to working with, by default 20 or 30 different people and talking with them about, the craft, picking up on their excitement about the industry, which, the longer we work in the industry, the more that excitement might fade a little bit.
Does it kind of give you that juice again and be like that
Ex-
bring like reignites that passion?
Exactly. So yeah, I really liked it. I picked up a couple of courses at Durham, then I picked up a couple more. When I first started teaching college, and I see a lot of teachers kind of falling into this. I was really formal about it. I'd wear nice shirts and nice pants, and I'd tuck in my shirt and would stand up straight. And I'd be very in the industry. Um, a little bit uptight in my first year of teaching. Hopefully I was still a good teacher. I think I was okay, but I found that teaching that way, it kind of blocked a lot of connection that I could have otherwise made with the students. And it also was just a lot more energy to teach that way, because I was kind of putting on a mask to do it right. My sister-in-law was a teacher. She went to like teachers college and she taught a bunch of stuff. And I think that's where I kind of got the idea of that's how I should teach college teaching, because it's this big, prestigious, fancy kind of thing. Um, so after teaching like that and finding like, oh man, I'm not sure if this is for me. It's a lot of work. I'm exhausted at the end of the day. I don't feel like I'm making a good connection. I kind of chilled out for the next semester that I taught, and that led to like a lot more rapport. It came a lot more naturally. The students did better, and I was like, oh,
Wow.
great! I found my teaching style, right? So that's uh, that's really good. That was very nice. So I had basically for several years there. I think probably between 2010 and 2015, I had made a steady career, like a lot of people have that I've talked to, of teaching and freelancing. Uh, that can be a pretty good combination.
Because you're able to kind of make your own schedule at that point when it comes to freelancing. Are you able to be like, you know what, this semester is going to be a little crazy, or at this time of the year, you get a project done and then be able to give yourself a little bit of time to be able to focus on one thing at a time?
Exactly, you can kind of like turn those knobs as needed, to turn one up and turn one down, or vice versa. So that was pretty good. Um, at one point, and I was teaching at Durham in their game art program and their animation program. And I think at this point, I probably taught every course in their game art program at the very least. So at one point, I was teaching 24 hours of classes a week, which I think is more than some full timers teach. But
Wow.
this
I
was
was going to
as a part
say,
time. Yeah. So, and I was having a blast. It was great. But then I got a letter from, I don't remember exactly who it's from, if it was from the dean or if it was from the union somehow. But basically, there's like rules around teaching. Teaching is the teachers' union is a big thing. We hear about it on the news all the time, obviously.
mhm.
So basically, there was a bylaw in there, or a guideline, or whatever, basically saying if someone works this many hours for this many semesters in a row, you must hire them full time because clearly you need them full time. And
Oh,
at the time, the college didn't want to hire any full time people because it's kind of been a trend in education where there's a lot less full time teachers being hired, and a lot
mhm.
of programs are kind of turning into like a army of part timers. And I don't want to rant about that too much because obviously I don't approve of that. I think full time permanent jobs are good for people.
And good for the
um,
students too, right? When you have someone that's
exactly,
their full
yeah,
time dedication.
because it kind of sucks when you find a professor that you really like and then they're gone next year and someone else is there, and you don't get any consistency. It makes the program harder to coordinate as
Mhm.
well. So I kind of got kicked out of teaching at that point. um, they told me next semester I could come back for a maximum of 6 hours a week, and I was like, well, I'm not really going to pay my
Eh,
bills doing that.
yeah.
So um, that was right around when Simon and I were hanging out a bunch. And I was like, I'm not going to go back to teaching this fall. Maybe I'll just go full time with the freelance and stuff and try my hand at an Ontario Creates application for, production fund or something. And we're like, oh, light bulb. That's when Reptoid started. So really, I have Durham College to thank for the founding of Reptoid Games, and for kind of going all in on starting my own thing then.
Which is something that, like, how many games ended up coming out of Reptoid? Well, like, during your tenure there, at least.
Really, there was only 2, like, original games that were Reptoid games. We had plenty of, game jams and prototypes and stuff, that went on, but really it was just, Fossil Hunters and Fire Tonight that came out with my time there.
Which I still see you working on, like, random game jams and, like, random little projects and, like,
Hell yeah.
trying out different programs and stuff. Like, even now, like, obviously, I wanna get into MRC Studios, but that's something that is, like, continued, at least as long as I've been following you,
Mhm.
of there's no, getting comfortable. There's no, okay, this is my position, this is my full-time thing, this is what I wanna be doing until, I retire, or it even though you found something that you clearly love and you love to do, that you're continuing to finick with things and to try different things and to help this person or jump with this studio. Is that something that you feel like you would just get super restless and bored because you're so
Yeah.
used to always having that, like, freelance is always that secondary thing? Or
Absolutely.
yeah, so, like, it's just something that, like,
Yeah.
when you're doing, MRC Studios, you're like, "You know what? I always need something else." There's always part of my creative brain that isn't being satisfied.
Yep. It changes from time to time. Like, so I left Reptoid in 2020, like early 2020, kind of because of the opposite reason, where we were having we were working on Fire Tonight. We had been doing a lot of kind of like client work,
Mhm.
freelance work with the studio, and I was kind of having some feelings. 2019 or 2018, sorry, was a rough year for me. First, it was my daughter was born, which is amazing. That is not rough at all, but obviously it's hard
Things
having a
change.
baby.
Yeah.
There's a lot of change that happens in your life, and a lot of things that kind of make you reevaluate your priorities. And then later that year, my father passed away,
Oh,
like
wow.
very suddenly. We had no idea that was coming, so that was really tough. So kind of those two things happening was leading to a lot of self reflection and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do next. And I couldn't really see what it was. I didn't know exactly where I was going, and I think I couldn't shake that feeling that it was time for me to leave Reptoid and go do something else, even though I didn't know what that something else was at that point.
Mhm.
So Simon and I had lots of chats about it, and ended up leaving officially in, I think it was January 2020, and then finishing up Fire Tonight just as like a contractor. So leaving the company to him in his good hands to kind of keep going with the stuff that he was interested in.
I'm looking really looking forward to their next project too. Hopefully, we get to hear a little bit more about it soon.
Yeah, they've been doing some cool stuff. Very excited to see anything that he puts out.
So the thing is, after Reptoid and during Reptoid was your time back at Durham College, and now with
Yeah,
MRC Studio, and now as the manager of MRC Studio. For our audience who isn't aware, can you give us the quick elevator pitch on what MRC Studio is?
yeah. So MRC Studio is an applied research hub that works with industry partners to solve problems, solve challenges, to engage in projects involved in mixed reality, virtual production, um, and anything that involves a game engine. Really, we do a lot of work with indie game studios, but we do work with like training and simulation. We work with interactive media stuff. We work with like film and television. Uh, so kind of all over the place. Generally, I say if a game engine is involved, if you can do the project using Unity or Unreal, it's probably a good project for us.
Which is just becoming more and more prevalent when it comes to film and television, right? Like, I'm sure you can speak to that
Yeah,
better than most. That
like
is now what you're seeing in the background.
yep, Unreal's
Yeah.
taken over the film and TV industry, which is really cool to see. And even Unity to a lesser degree are moving in on that space as well. Um, and also just there's so many old processes that we've been stuck with for a few decades now of like even just rendering out stuff. A lot of people are still using those old kind of offline renderers that require a render farm and take ages, and now real-time rendering is taken over for everything. So let's use game tech to get those frames out faster.
Do you feel like this is something this position kind of gives you that satisfaction that you're always like using the new cutting edge stuff, or you're always toying with different things because it's all about optimization? Or do you feel like, you know what, you kind of have, because with MRC Studio obviously being at Durham, is it just industry professionals, or do you have students involved, or like how is the frame and the structure of the studio? Because it's not your typical video game studio, as it were.
No, it's so strange when
That's what I
it's,
mean. I
it's a,
look it up. I've talked to you about it before, and I've looked at it. I'm like, I really want like the distinct explanation from you,
yeah.
so that's something I can repeat
So
to other people.
I mean, when I first started with the MRC studio, I was stepping away from Reptoid. I was still finishing up Fire Tonight. I was looking for some part time stuff. I called up John Goodwin, the coordinator of the game art program. He was my teacher back when I went to college in like 2003. He taught us Unreal Engine 2004 for
Wow.
level design. So I called him up and I was like, "Hey, you got any classes or whatever? I'm probably going to come back to teaching for a little bit while I figure things out." And he was like, "Yeah, of course," and shoveled a bunch. And he's like, "By the way, do you want to come work at the MRC?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I worked on VR a lot in like 2013 and 2014, and I got pretty sick of it. I'm not really interested in VR." And he's like, "Oh no, it's not just VR. It's pretty much anything." So he explained it to me. I met the now director of applied research at Durham, Vibha Tyagi, who is awesome person to work with. And I kind of started learning about the world of applied research, which is absolutely not what I thought it was. And what I kind of understood it as was we find industry partners, so like small, medium-sized game studios that are like pretty local, who are having projects that they need help with in targeted areas. So let's say they want to build a new kind of animation system for their game, or let's say they want to put together an Internet of Things device to talk to their game engine to create some kind of new mechanic. Or even let's say they have a character rating pipeline that they're not happy with, and they have a couple weird requirements that they need to kind of put together. All these things are like really good research projects. And from running game projects, previously, I knew that game development is unfortunately always full of uncertainty, and you're always trying to figure things out. And everything is a custom use case because we want every game to be different. So every game studio has a ton of like applied research opportunities. I didn't know applied research very well. I was just thinking about research for the sake of research, right?
Yeah,
You
100%.
see, Naughty Dog or CD Project Red or something will release a paper on a really complex, like, motion matching animation system or something, and it's like 50 pages, and you have to be very, very, very smart to understand what they're talking about and to be able to implement it. Um, it's not that. It's like hopping on projects and working. So we get these industry partners. We look to the college for the students that are here and what we study to support their work with, like, work integrated learning. So there's a game art program at Durham. There's an animation program at Durham. There's a computer programming program at Durham. There's an interactive media design. So it's like all of these people are people that can contribute
Yeah.
to games that are probably looking for careers in games. So students, companies, federal research grants. um, so not only can we pair these two up, have a project lead at the college who is like, an industry person who can lead these students, to mentor these students, talk to the industry partners and get the projects done. We can get a federal research grant to pay for like 80%, 90% of it. I was like, holy moly, this is like a gift I can take to the industry
Yeah, I
and
was
just
gonna say.
like so called up all the indies I know, and I'm like, what indies do I want to work with? Who who's inspired me in all these years in the local thing? So I love that I get to talk to everybody on like a regular basis about, like, hey, what are you working on? What do you need help with? What are the current challenges you're doing? And then giving like students those opportunities to like get game credits and contribute to a game before they graduate. Helping a lot of industry people who, they might be a little bit burnt out, some of them on like the 40-hour studio week with, or more than 40 hours in some cases. And this is a really nice position for them. Um, Getting all that stuff together, and the value to the industry partner where like they get a almost free project to help them develop their stuff. It's been really good.
Is there anything else like this in Ontario or even in Canada? Because I
There
feel like
is.
this is the first time I've really heard, like, the actual breakdown of what MRC does, and then I'm
Mhm.
trying to figure out, like, is there something else that is, doing this?
So other colleges have applied research departments. Not a lot of them are gaming focused. I think
Mm,
the closest thing is CERT, SIRT. So
mhm.
CERT Center is by from Sheridan College, but they're in Toronto. So they're more focused on like TV and film, but they do some game stuff as well. So we're actually partnered with CERT for some of our funds and some of our work. So we're talking all the time and collaborating on things. So they're really more of a film virtual production focus, and we're really more of we've ended up as more of a games first kind of thing, with some uh, virtual production and mixed reality stuff. So I'm in the studio right now. It's a disaster.
I don't know, it looks pretty cool from
we're,
here.
we're just opening up the new space. It's only been a few weeks, so there's like computers that are half built, and like, oh, I should have closed those doors at the very least,
Oh,
boxes and stuff. But
shows
this
shows the inner workings of the studio. It's awesome.
Yeah, so this is our new performance space. So this room is like fully set up for markerless motion capture. Um, so if I could turn it on, I could get myself captured sitting at the desk here, which it's not really useful data for anything, but
But over the last couple of years, like, getting to know you and seeing, like, some of the stuff that you've been working on, this seems like the dream position for you. Where you're
it's
just
great.
there's constantly things coming in and out, things are constantly changing in emotion, new people, and you get to still continue to, like, enrich all those relationships that you spent the last decade building. So
Yep,
it's awesome to see.
it's very cool. So yeah, as like managing the studio now, like I'm not directly on any projects really. I'll like hop on now and then if there's like, there's some programming involved in one project, and the 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 project lead is not really familiar with programming. I'll jump in and mentor the students a little bit, or if there's like some specific Unity thing or whatever, I'll hop in as needed a little bit. But mostly, I'm like the management level, which is different for me. I think a lot of my job now is like biz dev and talking to people and making schedules and figuring out, if I have these 7 projects that I'm scoping and these 9 project leads, and I want them all to have enough hours, and I want these projects to make sense, and I want that to work towards a strategic goal, and kind of like mapping all that kind of stuff out together is what my brain's doing. So I miss programming a little bit.
I was gonna say, I think now I understand why I'm seeing you doing these, like, random little projects and, like, testing these things out, because if you're spending so much of your time now with pipelines and biz dev, that you still need that creative itch that you crave.
Yeah. But I mean, my brain's too noisy to like actually focus on that. So I've been developing a game called Krog, which is actually a remake of the first game that I like made solo in like 2012. So I've been making that in my spare time, but I don't have that much spare time.
I was gonna say.
And my there's a lot of stuff bouncing around in my head these days. So progress is slow, but like very slow but steady. But that project's been a little bit therapeutic even because I don't have to subject it to my usual kind of like project management rigor. If it takes forever, that's okay.
It's just for
It
you.
doesn't
It's
need
for
to come
you.
out. There's no stakeholders, right? But yeah, once a year I get to do toe jam.
Hmm?
We'll do toe jam every year until I die, probably. And that's a really good time. Like it's really fun to just like, okay, everybody shut up. I'm making a game this weekend, and having something to show at the end of it. Usually, I put it on the App Store or something. Like that's the good stuff. I really like getting some work out there.
That's awesome. I'm glad to see that you're still like able to use that, like flex those creative muscles when you're in this managerial role. With all the extra spare time you have, besides managing Durham College, like MRC Studio, and doing your own game as well, you also recently started Ontario Game Testers.
Yeah, I did.
Where you find the
So
time, I have no idea.
yeah,
Was this something that you wanted to do because you felt like it was a gap in the industry? It felt like it was something that was really missing. And can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, I'd love to. So I first started getting really into game testing at Reptoid Games, and we were working on Fossil Hunters. So, Fossil Hunters was a decently long game for compared to the stuff that I had built in the past, and the we did weekly play tests at our studio of just Friday afternoon, the studio, everybody get off of their computers, go sit in the couch. We're going to play the game a bit. And that's pretty good for catching stuff, but like it's got to be someone else. It's got to be external to actually like notice the problems that your customers would notice. So that's when we started looking into QA because we had some QA in the budget. We wanted to have some external testing, and we called up a handful of testing studios, and I just didn't like how they worked at all. They it wasn't necessarily that they were expensive, but
Mhm.
they required a lot of work from us to get started. Most of them wanted like 50-page test plans to have all
Oh,
of our
wow.
documentation formatted in certain formats of like, tell me what every single mechanic is in your game and how it's supposed to work. And we're like, "Are you kidding me? We're an indie studio. Everything is so iterative. I can tell you how a feature is going to work, but like 2 weeks from now, it's going to work a little bit differently because we found it was better that way." So like, it just didn't work out. It was too much of like a big batch. Probably suits AAA really well,
Mhm.
but it was too much of a big batch for like indies.
Like, when,
And that's
like, the
why,
AAAs have, like, the bandwidth to be able to have people assigned to that and getting them the things that they need, and, like, that can
yeah,
be you don't have those hours in a day. You might. Most people don't have the hours in a day to be able to do that.
yeah, like they could probably stick a PA on it and take care of it. I'm not
Exactly, yeah.
sure, but I mean, they're much more documentation heavy there as well, right? So it probably does work better for them. So and rightly so. I mean, the QA studios probably should chase those AAA dollars because
100%.
they've got the big budgets. But yeah, I didn't think any of the studios were like a good fit. So we ended up doing our own QA. This is we got some students who were studying games into the studio, and we kind of structured a pretty Scrum-like kind of testing, basically revolving around like a rhythm of testing of like every week you play through the game start to finish. You log bugs as you go, and you confirm bugs that the development team has kind of marked as should be fixed. And the rule is that you know the development team can't say something's fixed because we tried that for a while and was like, this is fixed. It's definitely fixed. It's not going to happen anymore. They're like, no, that bug is still happening.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
like,
you find it. Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah.
The person who says a bug is fixed has to be the person who found the bug in the first place.
That's
So
a good way to look at it.
we kind of figured out the system that worked really well. It was really lightweight. It required no documentation. You can throw documentation at it for like specific testing, and that can be really helpful if you want specific focus in some areas. But um, yeah, it was a good process. It worked really well for us on a couple games. It worked especially well in Fire Tonight because like Fire Tonight, I'm really happy to say like it didn't launch with any bugs that we knew of, and we were testing the whole time.
Wow.
So that
That's
was
a
really
statement. I
cool.
think
That
that's
never
more I don't
happens.
wanna gloss over that. I think that's more of a statement than
It's a
most
small
people
game.
realize. Still,
Yeah, yeah. So pretty proud of that. So At MRC, following that,
Hmm.
we were looking for a lot of projects in our first couple of years that were easy to kind of start up and scale and help with industry partners. So we started doing testing projects at the MRC as well. So those went pretty well. We refined that process a little bit more. But as people started talking, we became more well known. We want to take on bigger projects. We want to take on more impactful projects that kind of end up under the MRC portfolio. We're doing less testing, and that's kind of like on purpose because we can do other things other than testing. So I think we'd probably still take testing projects at the MRC studio if there was something like really researchy about it, like some good angle
Hmm.
of like log bugs with your brain and have a thing that reads your mind or something, or I don't know. I'm definitely dreaming up an idea of like a voice activated bug reporting system, which would
Ooh.
be especially helpful for like VR or console or something where like
Mhm.
your device isn't going to be the thing that's capable of logging that bug. That like pulls the player log and a screenshot or a video or something out and kind of like allows for hands free bug reporting. But
Interesting. I feel
um,
like you're going to implement that the next year.
yeah,
Making notes.
the thing
Yeah.
that reads your brain, yeah, no problem. But yeah, we started doing less and less testing projects with the MRC, unless there's some like specific novelty to it. So that kind of made me start thinking like all these studios are still going to want testing, and like there's a good solution out there for them. So kind of combining that with, you know, this is a good system for indies. I don't see any other good testing system for indies. As well, there's no testing companies in Ontario for some reason. Like there were none, and all these people working on Ontario Creates projects.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with how that fund works, like it's kind of like 50% off if your testing happens in Ontario. In a way, not exactly, but
Yeah.
it's
There's
covered under
something in there.
the eligible Ontario expenditures. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I should start this up. Um, we were also turning away a fair number of testing projects at the MRC because people would come to us and say, "Hey, I need game testing. I need to start next week, or I need to start tomorrow." And like the MRC is within a college, uh,
Hmm.
and as you know, colleges aren't known for being fast. So it takes us like 4 weeks to get a project started if we're on the ball. So I think a lot of cases, that testing of like, hey, we're going into cert in a couple weeks, we need you to test the thing. We just couldn't respond to it. So
But no, you
I
can
think
personally be
I
like,
know we
hey,
can. So
point you in this direction.
yep. So really, really good market opportunity and like a system that had been working really well that just needs to get out there a little bit more. Um, yeah, it's pretty cool. And uh, part of the things I want to accomplish with this as well is, I want everything to be really kind of open and transparent. So I tell I tell the companies and the people that we work with that like there's no non compete, there's no non solicitation. So like if you're working with us for a couple weeks testing for a company and that company just wants to go and hire you directly because they want to keep working with you, go for it. Poach my people. That's fine because
Wow.
unlike staffing up the development of games at Reptoid, which was difficult because you want to get a really good 3D artist, you want to get a really good programmer, you want to get a really good level designer. Those are really skilled positions, and everyone's talking about the labor shortage, right? Like, let's say I need an Unreal C++ developer. I think I'm SOL because there's so few of them, and they're in such high demand right now. Um, I can hire testers. I can hire people who are really good testers. And like this system's simple enough that I can onboard them pretty quickly and like they're doing really good work. So building a business around something that can scale, like personnel that can scale, has been really good. So in a lot of cases, I've had to staff up projects really fast, and like it's been successful.
If people are looking to get involved with Ontario game testers, whether it be they have a project to offer or it's a
Mhm.
position or something they'd be interested in, how could they go about doing that?
OntarioGameTesters.com.
Boom. We'll drop it in the
Boom.
description. Easy as that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to work with us as a tester, if you scroll down to like the bottom, there's like a newsletter sign up thingy that we'll use for sending out job alerts, and then there's like an email that you can get in touch with us for if you got a company that wants testing. And like the testing is really simple. Like it's $32 an hour. Figure out how many hours a week you want, how long, and we'll just bill it at that. So really,
Wow.
really simple and transparent. Just
All
make it
right.
easy.
I think that, yeah, that's something that is sorely lacking in Ontario. So that's awesome to hear. I will make sure to push that everywhere we can. Um, one of the things I do always like to ask all of our guests, especially ones who are obviously very ingrained in the video game industry, is there something that you're currently playing right now? Doesn't have to be from Ontario that you're using for inspiration, or you're finding something that has really just grabbed your attention in a way that a game hasn't in a while.
Mm. Um, just a couple weeks ago, my partner and I finished playing through our second playthrough of Paradise Killer, which not a lot of people have heard of, it seems.
Yeah,
Paradise Killer is like a it's like an open world Danganronpa kind of thing. So it's like
interesting.
very interesting game, and like totally didn't know what I was getting into when I first played it. So we played it on Switch last year, and we had a blast with it. Uh, and there's this effect when you play a really good game that like you finish it and wow, that was a great ending. I love that ending. I love this game. This is so great. And then you're just sad for a while.
Yeah, you just feel this emptiness watching the credits.
Yeah.
I have felt that many times.
Yeah. And then you're like, you're looking for a rebound game. And it's like, oh, well, that game was really good. I want to play another game. And it's like, and play this one. I'm like, "Ah, it's not the same.
It's just
How
not the
about this
same.
one? It's just not what I'm looking for right now. And then it will take like a month for you to like, to love again. Um, so um, on a whim, because we were like, oh, what should we play? I don't know. Let's try playing this. Oh, there's too much text. It's tiny on the TV. Um, we were like, I had Paradise Killer on Steam. Do you want to play Paradise Killer on PC? It will be like an HD remake compared to the Switch
Basically, yeah,
version.
100%.
It's got ambient occlusion now. It's got cast shadows. Whoa! So we played through it. We 100%ed the game. We got every achievement, and we're like, oh yeah, that was a great use of time. So
Is it couch co-op, or is it like two different screens?
just one player. So we
Oh,
just
okay,
play through
gotcha.
and take pass the controller back and forth, take turns exploring, reading. Sometimes the other person's like looking up stuff on the iPad of like, hey, how do we get this achievement? Oh, there's a thing hidden over here.
My
Oh, I
partner and
see.
I literally did the same thing. We did that a lot
Like,
with like Breath of the Wild and like a few other games.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I do love being able to have those games that really spark that in you. And you're right though. As soon as something does like that does end, like, I think like most recently for me was probably, I want to say The Last of Us 2, but I'm sure there
mm,
was something else like in between that. But that was just one game that like it ended. And I just like felt empty inside. I
yep,
was like, I need to find something else.
yep.
But
So
yeah, no,
that's the big one. The other games are mostly playing with my daughters. My daughter's 4. Actually, she'll be 5 in like a week or two. So she's 4 years old. She's really into Paper Mario, the original,
oh,
and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Uh, those are
really?
kind of our 2 things that we wander back and forth with.
It must be
It's
kind of
like
fun for you though, like certain games that you wouldn't necessarily have played on your own, but now like kind of have an excuse to go through it, and you find
yeah,
like feel like you find certain things a little more satisfying than your average person, just based on your
totally.
programming experience.
Yeah, well, and learning her perspective on things too. Like she's 5 or 4 or whatever age she is right now. She's not interested in like 100%ing a game. So
That's
like
true. She doesn't have that dopamine itch yet. She doesn't have any worries.
no, she just wants to enjoy it. So there's all these quests we could do in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. We're in like the post game now. And it's like, oh, don't you want to go find the fallen artifact or talk to all the legendary Pokemon birds or whatever? And she's like, nope, I want to make a team of red Pokemon and I want to go to this place that's blue with them and I want to fight Pokemon that are red against blue. I'm like, sure. And with Paper Mario,
That's
like
awesome.
she loves dry desert and the dry ruins. And I'm like, hey, do you want to go forward and like get through the haunted woods and everything? She's like, nah, it's too scary. Let's go to the desert. So like we've been on the desert for like a month now. And like I don't think she has any interest in progressing past that. And honestly, that's a really good perspective because she's like, I
I
found
agree.
the fun part of the game that I like and I'm just gonna push on it. Like, fair
Good
enough.
on her,
Yeah,
instead of like pushing her way through. That's awesome. So the fact that most of the time with this podcast, we try to keep it a little bit separate from Interactive Ontario. For those who don't know, the lodge is run by Interactive Ontario, but having you on, I feel like gives us a unique opportunity to be able to discuss the Indie Superboost, which is a program that Interactive Ontario runs, and you are in fact the chair of the committee and moderate most of the panels. Do you want to give our audience a little bit of a breakdown on what the Indie Superboost has to offer?
sure. Yeah, Indie Super Boost is really cool. It's a like a monthly gathering of game developers. It started to just be Ontario through Interactive Ontario, but I think I think we're beyond that now, and it's a bunch of other Canadian studios are kind of coming in through some like cross partnership stuff.
We've opened it up to CIAC members. So, like,
That's it.
DGBC, the Guild, anyone that's a part of one of those organizations, they get a free ticket as well. Same thing as IO members. And then anyone that's in Ontario is also able to purchase a ticket, as well as outside of Ontario. People are able to purchase a ticket anytime on our website.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So it's kind of more bespoke. So it's not we have a monthly guest, which is an industry person who's known for creating creating certain kinds of games, doing certain kinds of work, that kind of thing. It's like reputable people in the industry will come in and be our guests, but it's not like a GDC talk. There's no slides. It's
Hmm.
not prepared. And like we encourage the audience to kind of come in and go off the rails and kind of go off on tangents about things. So it's really more of a like intimate thing. We also don't record them. We recorded one, but that was like kind of a special case, and it made sense for that one. But generally, we don't record them. So then, if we're talking about like uh, consoles or publishing deals or other kind of like usually biz devy kind of stuff, like they can feel a little bit more open to sharing, which kind of makes the the conversation a little more valuable to everybody. So
Yeah, I think that was something we decided like very early on, is we wanted people to be able to be as candid as possible. And
yeah.
of course, if something's recorded, people are automatically going to be a little bit more reserved when talking about, maybe like deals or experiences they've had, or something that may not shine the best light on situations that they've been involved in. But this allows people to be much more candid and open. And I like, you're right. I think it brings a lot more value to the conversation because people are open and honest and transparent, in a lot of situations where people may not be. So yeah, we did record the one. It was more of a panel with Caitlin Tremblay. Everyone should go check that out. It was awesome. It was on collective world building. But
Mhm.
that was a unique case for the most part. Yeah, we do try to make sure that we don't record anything, let everybody know that, so that people can be a little more forthcoming and forthright, even with their questions. Some people might be a little bit
Mhm.
insecure about specific questions, something that they feel that they should know, or whatever it may be. This gives them an opportunity to be in a safe space, and come in and kind of just ask in the open. And it's a hell of a group of people. It's really fun.
It is. Yeah, yeah. A lot of the same people coming every week, so we're kind of
Mhm,
figuring out who the little tribe of people are.
mhm.
But yeah, I really like it. It reminds me a lot of when I first kind of got into the game industry, like not making games, but like actually talking to other people who make games. It was like 2010 when I first came to Toronto or came back to Toronto. I was going to the IGDA meetups at
Mhm.
Metro Hall. They don't have those anymore, and having a desk at it was Bento Miso, then turned into Gamma Space, and now it's not even like a space anymore, but like co-working with other game devs. It reminded me a lot of those experiences, like going out to a bar after the IGA event, or just goofing off in a co-working space with other game devs, and just hearing what they're up to, hearing what they're challenged by, and the kind of stuff that they're going through, and even like the immature stuff of like Sony or Microsoft, like those kind of conversations, like even if they're kind of crude or petty or not something that anyone would admit to talking about later, um, they're really valuable for kind of shaping those experiences, and getting into the industry, and getting connected with people. So it's kind of like your game dev friend group that will tell you about all the stuff that they're going through, which especially these days where we're trying really hard to stay connected to someone, to stay connected to the
100%.
industry.
The idea came up for this obviously during the pandemic. And it was something that was, we had sorely missed doing in-person events. Luckily we've been able to, we did one in December. We're going to be doing more coming up, XP, things like that. But this seemed to be a place that a lot of people would come in. We even have like the chat in the Discord that, a lot of people are dropping resources, information. It's also connecting a lot of people because we are able to get, we've been very lucky at getting some quite outstanding guests, to be frank. Um,
Yeah.
People coming in, and every single one of them has been so giving and so open, answering all the questions in the chat, staying late most of the time, to make sure we get to everybody, and then jumping into the chat afterwards, and offering this resource or that resource, and connecting with people and seeing the relationships build from that has just been a joy to watch, which is like more than we could have ever expected. And yeah, having a hell of a committee, to kind of come in and take over, and do such a wonderful job with it. Something that we're really proud of. So
Mhm.
We
Yeah, it's
appreciate
fun.
you.
It's fun to interview people too. It's not something that I like ever thought I'd really be doing on a regular basis, but
Me
I'm
neither.
getting a lot of juice out of it. And
Yeah. It's
yeah,
fun.
same,
Yeah,
same for
I
you. Yeah,
agree.
it is fun. Um, and I mean, it helps that it's good people.
I agree.
But yeah, definitely every now and then, when we get someone coming in, it's like, hey, we secured this person as a guest for our next one. I'm like, holy moly, it's like a real game dev person who
Yep.
isn't just like a little indie studio person. And I'm like, I don't know if I can find anything to talk to them about. Do my research, try to find a couple of things to talk to them about, and then like every single time, even if I think I'm not going to have anything to talk about, there's tons to talk about. I learn a ton. I'm amazed how open everybody is, and I'm amazed how everybody's kind of going through the same struggles. Like hearing from the big
Yes.
studios, like we had Max Hoberman a little while ago from Certain Affinity, and like a lot of the stuff that he kind of cited as challenging for him. I'm like, I'm talking to studios at the MRC all the time who are going through the exact same issues. It's like you can get bigger and more successful, and that's great. But like fundamentally, games are always still hard to make,
It's a
and
miracle
there's
that
certain
any game comes out.
yes,
Like,
yeah. I mean, hats off to all these brave game developers who are jumping in with both feet and pulling it off on a regular basis somehow. It's an incredible industry just because of how like dedicated people are to sticking with it.
I agree. I think that's honestly a phenomenal way, I think, to end the episode. So yeah, that'll about do it for episode 16 of the Lodge podcast. Ryan, do you have any final words before we sign off for the day?
Be kind to each other.
That's the best one yet.
There you go.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you to Ontario Creates for your continued support of thelodge.com. Shout out to Natalie, our producer on the ones and twos, always making us look and sound good. We appreciate that. Everyone, make sure to go and check out everything going on with MRC Studio, OntarioGameTesters.com, if you have either a project to submit or a position that you're looking for, and everywhere else that you can find Ryan Miller. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of the Lodge podcast, and we cannot wait to talk to all of you again and see you all. Be safe, and most importantly, take care.